Welcome to episode 4 of Open Source. I'm here with Chris Heatherly of Mystery Society. Chris, happy to have you here, especially considering the circumstances.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir. And if you want to give yourself like a more formal introduction, feel free. Um,
Yeah, I'm Chris Heatherly. I'm the CEO of the Mystery Society. Prior to that, I'm probably best known for I was an executive at Disney that did various things. Oversaw the toy business at one point, but was over the Disney mobile games business and was the general manager of Club Penguin for a while. And after that, I started a games business at Universal Studios and built that up for them. And but I've been in free to play mobile gaming primarily for over a decade. So a lot of experience yeah, even longer than that. But a lot of experience in mobile free to play and in games in general, and been in Web3 the last 4 years. So yeah, thank you for having me on.
that's a pretty stacked resume. Toy business, that's a first for me. Like I've met a lot of founders that have worked at all sorts of gaming companies, but toy business, that's actually pretty sick. Um,
Yeah.
how was that experience compared to like gaming?
Um. Well, uh, the thing about the toy business is that it's a very mature business, so it's more of a fight for market share. But I mean, it's my kids were really young at that time, so they were like the perfect age, you know.
Oh, that's sick.
Yeah, and so I made the toys that they played with. So I had like an edge, as we would say in Web3, and I got to work with Mattel and Lego and Hasbro and all Funko and all the big toy companies, and got to make toys, work with Pixar, work with Disney Animation. I mean, it was pretty magical. And you get to make something that like especially with like the Disney Princess dolls, the Cars toys, they're things that like everybody's kid has, so
Yep.
you're I've had I've made a lot of different types of products in my career, and I've been fortunate to be able to do a few things, Club Penguin being one of them, that touches like lots of people. And whenever you get to be a part of that, something like that, it's pretty special. So, yeah. But the way that I wound up going to Club Penguin was, I was running the toy business, and we did the acquisition with Club Penguin, and I did the Club Penguin toys, and I sort of personally led that project because I was really passionate about it. And most people at Disney just didn't understand Club Penguin at all, and I just really vibed with the founder, who was another like Steve Jobs acolyte like me, and he and I just made really good friends. And then when he was looking for someone to come over to help him run Club Penguin, because he had made a lot of money in the acquisition, and at some point he was going to move on, but he wanted to kind of entrust it to somebody who actually cared and understood, what he was trying to do. And so I went over there and took over Club Penguin. And then when he stepped away, I became the GM. And that's how I wound up getting into gaming. So it's actually funny because there's a lot of similarity there with Luca and kind of what he's done with Pudgy. And
Yeah, that's pretty.
you
That's pretty serendipitous, I would say, because Club Penguin is like what he always references. Your story sounds very like CTO ish, in its own way, right? Like, when I told my wife actually used to play the crap out of Club Penguin, so when I told
oh,
her
really? Yeah, that's
yeah,
awesome.
when I told her that I was gonna be talking to you, she was actually pretty stoked.
Yeah, tell her
Um,
Spike Hike says waddle on.
yeah, that's exactly what I told her. I was like, "Yo, I got Spike High coming on." And yeah, I'll make sure that I tell her waddle on. She'll probably watch this, so
Yeah.
she'll be excited. But yeah, that's
Yeah, I mean, that
actually
was the best. That was the best. I mean, that was one of the best experiences of my career. Super special community. The team was amazing. Just really magical getting to. I mean, it was everything that it was. It was. I mean, it was like working in Willy Wonka's chocolate factory or something, like
Oh, that's cool.
the place was just lined with art that was sent, all the walls. We had art that was sent to us by kids. Everything was just about serving the audience and, being really plugged into the to kids. And, kids are such a great, group to work with because, while they can be like negative and bratty or whatever sometimes, like they also have that really optimistic and happy side,
Yeah,
and there's far more of the good than the bad, if you know what I mean. And
for sure.
I you're able to change. We did a bunch of stuff for charity, and you're able to be like a really, it was just a really magical, special place. And to this day, when I bring a Club Penguin, it brings a smile to people's faces, and we often, my current team, or the team that I had to say goodbye to today, are mostly Club Penguin vets who came back to do this. And a lot of what motivated me to do the Mystery Society was kind of wanting to recapture some of that, some of that community feeling, which I think we wound up finding some of it in Web3 and not in other ways, but there definitely was some of it here. But we often talk as a team, like, we were talking yesterday about, is it better that Club Penguin is gone, or that, or that, if it had stayed around, would have been just more run into the ground, and there's a part of me that kind of feels like the fact that I left Disney. I mean, the reason I left Disney is they wanted me to shut it down and I wouldn't do it. And I just believed it was too special a thing to, and for business reasons, I didn't think it needed to be shut down. But I just couldn't. I didn't have the heart to do it. I loved it too much. And I really, behind the scenes, it was really hard to keep Club Penguin alive because just like all the antibodies at Disney just wanted to get rid of it because by that point, they kind of decided that they didn't want to really be in the games business. And Club Penguin was the thing that was really still making money. And, it was kind of, I don't know, there was just a lot of resistance to it. And I just, wasn't going to be the one to get rid of it. And so,
So it never stopped making money like at all. That's crazy. I
no,
didn't know that. I thought it just like eventually fizzled out. I had no idea that. Like it was
No,
still
we wound up
cooking.
having to shut it down, honestly, because of tech. I mean, the tech, when Steve Jobs killed Flash, that kind of killed Club Penguin.
Oh,
We
okay.
were so heavily, invested into Flash. I led a big project to get it onto mobile, but we were just never as successful on mobile as we were on web because there's so many more things to play on
Yeah.
mobile. And to be honest, that style of gameplay worked better for the PC. And so we did a project called Club Penguin Island to try to kind of reinvent the game for mobile, but I don't think Disney gave it enough time, honestly. Like when I talk to people who I started the project, but then I left halfway through when I talked to people who were on it, it actually had kind of decent KPIs. But at that point, Disney wasn't willing to invest to kind of, build Club Penguin back. So, what really, I mean, Club Penguin was just, it was this little flash game and it just took off. And, the
Yeah, it was like a
technology.
baby metaverse. That's what it felt like, at the time. It's like almost like this baby metaverse slash social club.
Yeah, exactly. And but the technology behind it was like really kind of cobbled together. And we just fought that all the time. And it got to a point where, I mean, honestly, the thing that killed Club Penguin, there are a lot of things that we could go down the list of, but one was just the payment system in the end was being
Interesting.
retired, and so we couldn't take payments anymore. And it wasn't worth the lift. At that point, it would have been like a multi-million-dollar exercise to get new payment system on it. Now you have Xola and all that; it's a lot easier. But so we, but I, I, the thing that I feel about that is that it's kind of good that we sort of ended in, we ended that in a good way, and like the audience can have positive memories of Club Penguin as opposed to, it got a little. it kind of got run down, I think, towards the end. But it, it didn't become sad and embarrassing, so people still look back on it as like, with
Yeah.
nostalgia. And
You
part of what
never
I
you
want
never
to
got
do,
to you never got to see the superstar play like shit. He just had a down year on the end.
yeah, yeah,
Metaphor,
you had like a bad
sports
last
metaphor.
album,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, what's interesting, and this kind of leads into what made me want to do the Mystery Society was,
Yeah.
during the pandemic, um, there were a lot of things that kind of came together during the pandemic that got me started on this project. But one was that there was this resurgence of Club Penguin all of a sudden, where there are a lot of private servers that are still run, and Disney kind of ignored them for a while, and one of them got massive, like it was doing, I think, like 3 million DAU or something, and
Wow.
and and it was more than we had been at our peak, and I remember calling the co-founder, who's a friend of mine, and I was like, hey Lane, like, because we always said there was another project we were working on, which was a digital Disneyland, and which was a whole, very difficult to pull off, and it's what they're trying to do now with Epic, but it's hard. And but we worked on this digital Disneyland, and we had been pitching like, look, these are the virtual versions of theme parks, and I called up Lane during the pandemic. I said, can you believe, like, today, Disneyland, Disney World, Shanghai Disney, Tokyo Disney Sea, whatever, they're all shut down. All the parks are shut down. And Club Penguin has more visitors than any Disney park today. I'm like, that's freaking wild. I was like,
That's actually fucking crazy.
yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
if we had done Imagination, was the name of the park. I was like, if we had done Imagination, which was the kind of the virtual Disneyland, like that would be one of the most played games on earth right now, and so that was one of the things that was in my head, right? Was and it kind of spoke to this idea of these enduring communities that, you know Club Penguin was gone, but people had just ripped the files off and were finding ways to resurrect it. And and I have one of the guys that I had worked with at Disney, Star Long, had he created a game called, or helped create a game called, Ultima Online, which was one of the first MMOs. And
Shout out
I remember,
Ultima. Yeah, I'm a big MMO head. So
yeah, I remember when
shout
he
out.
worked for me, he went out to go visit that Ultima Online team, and there was still a team together. It wasn't his team or anyone he knew, but they kind of wanted him to visit because he had been the founder, and for their, like, I think it was like 10th or 15th anniversary or something. And he goes out there and he's like, man, it's wild. Like, all these people run these pirate servers, and they make a living off running these little, like, kind of private servers. He's like, imagine if you could, like, um, create a way to, like, make your game where people could mod it, and like, where the community could just run it forever. And he went and did this company called Portalarium with Richard Garriott, who had founded Ultima Online with, or who was the creator of Ultima, Lord British. And he went and did this game called Portalarium that, or Shroud of the Avatar was the name of the game. And they and it was all crowdsourced and doing all this stuff before Web3. And he was, pioneering, like, land sales. He was one of these very creative guys. And he said to me, I'm going to sell land. I was like, that's a crazy idea. He's like, I think it may work, so, like, so anyway, but what I kind of was always interested by with those MMOs is, like, they never die. If you could, the idea that, like, could we ultimately put this in the hands of the community and let the community help build it or run it, and will that prevent us from having to shut down these games, was something that was kind of appealing to me. And it's one of the reasons that I wanted to do Web3, was kind of, is there a way to build with your community?
That's actually really interesting. So I see like a couple of reasons for you building in Web3, right? Like the payment systems, was that part of it too? Like overall?
Not the main. I wouldn't say it was the main motivator, but it's definitely. I mean, I like the idea of ownership, um,
Yeah.
and decentralization, and just more kind of ownership and the ability to do creative things with with revenue models and with sharing fees with your community and stuff like that. New economic models was really the reason I got into it.
Okay,
I wanted
okay.
to figure out how to do like a community. I mean, my notion was like, can you have a team of like 10 core people that build your game and then you sort of grow it with, all the other arms and legs of your community and you're able to
Yep.
share revenue with them in some way. I
It's
thought that
funny
was a
because oh, go ahead, go ahead.
no, no, no.
It's funny because that's actually that's arguably the biggest reason I started Catalyst with my friends. We love the idea of like UGC, and we love the idea of being able to take our IP and our world that we have like within our community and then like attach it to a game. So when we first started our community, we were kind of all in on this idea of like, hey, we're gonna have fun, we're gonna play games with our friends, and then we're gonna be able to make like our own little mini worlds inside of other games because of how Web3 and crypto work. And then we like quickly found out that the space wasn't ready for that yet, so we had to like pivot and kind of do random things in between until the games would be ready for us to do that type of stuff. Um, but yeah, it's and it's also very interesting because the person Souls, who's a really good friend of mine, that had kind of like sparked up part of this conversation about like the IP and stuff that we'll get into later. That's exactly what he wanted to do, what he's doing with his game. Like they've like commoditized their IP in a way where people can just like buy a certain amount of the token and it gives them like the right to build on the IP. And I think they have like 8 different teams currently building like mini games around the IP. So it'll be like interesting to see. But yeah, I would actually love to hear more about like I guess where does mystery society really start to come in, and then because the vision sounds so Web3, like the way that you're describing it to me right now, right? And
Mhm.
then I guess where does it hit like bumps in the road that prevent that from like happening in its current form?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll take a little step back and just kind of tell the story of the game a little bit, and kind of how we got here. So, um, you know, like I said, the pandemic was a big part of kind of, when I started this, and um, I'd been at Disney and Universal. When I was at Universal, they kind of rug pulled me. I built up a team of like 70 people, and we had a bunch of games in development, some really good ones, very talented team. And then they decided, when streaming kind of hit, they decided they couldn't, basically they were killing all kind of ancillary projects. You always love to be in a bucket called ancillary. And that's your first clue that you're not important. And they needed the cash to go do Peacock and streaming, right? And so I was like busted up because I'd built this great team and brought a bunch of people over from Disney. And I was like, no, 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 these guys get it. They're gonna, they get it so much better than Disney does, and we're gonna show them. And we ultimately weren't able to do that. So I was really bummed. And I wound up going to another company that did mobile free play games, and and we had this great game called Funko Pop Blitz, which was had a bunch of the Funko, bunch of IPs that they worked with. Like, we had, everything Universal had because it was spun out of Universal, but we also had like Doctor Who and Care Bears and Hello
Yeah,
Kitty and a bunch of
I
like,
had a cousin that was addicted to that game,
there you
so I'm
go.
familiar with
That
it.
game is a
Yeah,
great game. One of
yeah,
the most polished games I've ever made in my life. And, so I spun that game out. I went over there. I got that, kind of set up over there. And then I left that company, and they had really been hit by the pandemic. And, when they acquired us, like, they had just done a big round and they were feeling, rich, and, you know, we're in a
yeah.
position to invest. And pretty soon, like, the pandemic's happening. We're all working from home. They're running out of money. And so, they didn't have quite what they needed to invest in the game. And so I kind of volunteered to leave, but, to keep the game running because, I was like, okay, I've kind of done, what I needed to do. And I started consulting and I just couldn't like all the work that I was doing at that time was like business development stuff, monetizing my Rolodex, and I hate doing that. I hate it. And I told my wife, I was like, if I don't have a creative project, like I don't know what I'm going to do. Like I'm losing my mind. And so I said a couple of guys that had been two of my best game developers. One of them was the creator of a game called Where's My Water and Jelly Car. You may have played those. He one of the most creative game makers named Tim Fitzrandolph. He and his partner were available, and they just happened to have a hole in their schedule and project not lined up. And I said, hey, what if I self fund this? Because I was actually making good money consulting. I just hated what I was doing. So I was like, what if I just
Relatable.
I was like, what if I fund this and we make this game? And it was kind of famous last words, right? Because we looked at it. What had been nagging at me. So I was talking about, Club Penguin being open and all that stuff during the pandemic. And then I was paying attention to what was going on with Among Us. And I was just like super jealous because I was like, this game has very Club Penguin-y vibes to it. It's super simple. And it's, but it's got the whole community thing, but it's nowhere near as big or as expansive or has all the mini games. Like it's not as complicated as Club Penguin was. I was like, so could you take this social deduction formula and kind of use that to build a community that then you could start to introduce more, mini games and more to do. And so we started. And so I was like, and then the other thing was, I'm like, who's done the Clue version of this? Because I'm a huge Clue fan. I used to play Clue a lot with my kids. What's that?
That's cool. I never put that together, but like it makes sense now. Like you being into Clue, Mystery Society, like it hits a little different because
yeah,
my wife
Clue.
actually plays the crap out of Clue, so that's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's
you guys will probably have a lot in common.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of people. There's also a thing here in LA called the Magic Castle, which is it's a magicians only private club, and it's like in a mansion up on a hill in Hollywood, and it's got all these secret passageways and illusions and all that. I've always been into that kind of stuff. I love that stuff. Walt Disney was in that kind of stuff. I was always into that kind of stuff when I was at Disney. And so anyway, I like the Magic Castle was kind of in my head. Clue was in my head. I used to be a big fan of the show growing up called Mystery on PBS that had I forget the name of the artist, but they had Edward Gorey art, and it was very kind of like macabre but funny kind of thing. And so I had all these things. It was just stuck in my head. I was like, I want to make this, and so we just started working on it, and we were like, we'll probably knock this out in 6 months, sell it on Steam, something like that. And of course, famous last words, right? It takes, a year or so. And by then I'd been working at Recur. Back up. We started working on, or I decided I'm gonna self-fund this game. And the part I'm gonna be a little vulnerable here and tell you something personal that I haven't really told a lot of people, but all that kind of shrapnel from like, my struggles with keeping Club Penguin open and Universal and kind of the way things ended there, and then the pandemic, and then having to leave my team at a network on the Funko game. I was just really like not feeling great, like I was really kind of down, and I really started drinking pretty heavily, and I wound up going to rehab to get sober. And when I was going to rehab, I said to my wife, like, I need to keep this game. Like, I need something, to hold on to. And so she let me keep investing in this game. And the first prototype I ever played of this game was in rehab. And And also during rehab, a couple other things had happened. One was I'd been introduced by a friend to called me and he said, who's a kind of pretty well known for collecting. His name's Jeremy Padower. He's the big guy at a game company called Jazzwares. And but he's very well known for like collecting and things, and he's good friends with Logan Paul. And he called me and said, Logan is getting into NFTs. You know what NFTs are? I'm like, those are the collectible, the digital collectibles. He's like, yeah. I was like, crypto kitties? He's like, yeah. He's like, they're really getting ready to take off and be big. And Logan wants to do something with Club Penguin, and he wants to see if you can help get the Club Penguin license. So, while I'm in rehab, I have this call with Logan Paul where we talk for like an hour about Club Penguin and trying to get Club Penguin IP to do a drop. And we never got it done, but that kind of got me on that down that path. And then the third thing that happened while I was there was I got introduced to this company called Recur, that was an NFT company, and they needed an advisor, and they were just thinking about doing NFTs. And so I'm trying to put my life back together and kind of like find things that I can get involved in while I'm kind of in recovery without like overexerting myself. And so I was like, yeah, I'll advise for Recur. And I started helping them out, and then 6 months later I was doing a lot better. And I've been 4 years sober now. But 6 months later I was doing a lot better, and I was like, okay, I feel like I'm up to like go full time. And I went to Recur as an executive and helped them build their team out and do a bunch of creative stuff there. We did Nickelodeon, we did Star Trek, we did Hello Kitty, did a bunch of big brands, brought those to NFTs. And that was a wild ride because those guys, they spent $50 million in a year and spend it on, not all productively, shall we say. But I like, and it was like a very stressful thing, but I had a lot of fun there, and I just fell in love with NFTs. And this whole time I'm doing the Mystery Society, what we were calling Murder Amongst Friends at that time, kind of on the side. And I just kept thinking, like, I started getting into the PFPs because that was around the time when Bored Ape started. And nobody really knew what an NFT was supposed to be then, and Bored Ape wound up kind of catalyzing what people wanted an NFT to be. I think somewhat to the detriment of the NFT market because there's so many things you can do with NFTs, but we got trapped in this kind of PFP idiom.
For sure, right before Bored Apes, we were having something really cool starting to happen with like music and actual like more fine art, and then Bored Apes just like popped off, and
in a good way, right? But then then everything had to be a PFP, and if it wasn't a PFP, you couldn't do it, and no one knew what to do with it. And I think that persists to this day, which is really unfortunate. But I was like, okay, these PFPs seem to be working. We need to do PFPs. And the more I studied these PFP things, I was like, what people want, like, they're not just buying these because it's art. They want to be part of a community. They want to be part of a club. And I was thinking about the Mystery Society, or about the game that I was building and all the things I told you about Club Penguin and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, these guys want a club. They need a clubhouse to hang out in. Discord is kind of a shitty clubhouse because all you can do on there is text and do a few things. I
fucking hate Discord. It's the worst.
Yeah, and the reason it turns negative, I think, so easily is because people get bored, right? And it's like, and shit talking is, it's kind of like bull posting and saying wag me and all that gets old quickly, but somehow bitching and being negative is evergreen. It's our favorite pastime. So I was like, we need a clubhouse for this, for people to hang out in and have something to do. And the mystery and this mystery game we're building could be a great clubhouse for people. So, I put the game on hold because I'd spent so much at that point that, I spent $500,000 of my own money on it. And I'm not a
That's a lot.
gazillionaire, so it was a big investment. Um, but so now I've spent all this money on it. I'm like, well, what do I do? Now I got to make it back somehow.
I
And
can't fucking I can't just take this L.
you can't take the L, right? So
Yeah.
I was like, well, I was looking at maybe we publish it, on Steam or sell it to someone, and I realized I don't know anything about publishing on Steam, and 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 but I got close to selling it to Netflix a couple times. On two different occasions, they would call me and be like, "We want the game, we want the game," and then they'd make me jump through a bunch of hoops, and then I'd never hear back, and then so after a while, I was like, "Look,
Typical sales story. I've heard a lot of those. I've experienced a couple myself. Where it's like you think you're gonna close the deal, and then, oh, we just need this other piece of paper, or we need this one more thing, and then before you know it, 3 months later, you still haven't done shit.
Well, I think they've been trying to figure out kind of what Netflix
Yeah.
games should be. And so, they think like, oh, it's going to, like we should do this. And then by the time you get through the conversation, they're like, no, 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 we're doing this other thing. So the last time they called me, I was like, look, I want to take this game and I want to go into Web3 instead. So I decided I was going to go raise, and I got a grant from Polygon, and I kind of that allowed me to bring um, Justin, my artist, back. So when I put the game on pause, he went to Recur. And then after Recur, I was able to bring him back and kind of have him work on stuff. I brought back the original devs to do some stuff. And that got me at least to like a demo that I could play and use to raise funds. And it took me probably 6 months, but $3 million, and during the bear, which was, I mean, no
Yeah,
one was.
beginning of last year, right? Like, I remember seeing that announcement. I was like, I was in the space for a little while already. Um, yeah, wait, I'm trying to remember. Was it? Yeah, I started in the beginning of 23, so I was like a year in when you guys raised 3 million last year, and I was like, holy shit, these guys are like, they must be cooking something because no one was raising at that time. Yeah, it was
Well,
pretty nuts.
we raised it. I mean, well, we actually raised it in September of August, September 23 was when we closed. And so I was like, okay, we got the money. I can bring on the team. We could do this. And we were off and running. And but to look back, so I've been working on this game in some fashion for 4 years, right? And
Yep.
to look back on it, and it's like at the lowest point in my life, literally the lowest point, where I needed something, just to kind of pull myself out of that hole a little bit, like creatively, to take it from like this idea that well, and the other thing, when I was rehab, was there was a guy there named Frank who was one of my ran the rehab I was at, and he just happened to be into crypto, and so when I wasn't like doing my rehab stuff, like he and I would just talk about crypto and like what's going on with NFTs and all this other stuff. So all these things happening right at the same time while I was in there, and I was like, and that kind of like was the rebirth of like where I am now, and so to go from like just being so beaten down and kind of you know um kind of just feeling beaten down by life a little bit at that moment, and that game was kind of a ladder out for me, I think, and to take it from where it is to like to get to where we even got, and to launch it and to build a community around it and to raise money around it and to build a team around it. Like, I mean, not a lot of people would like go to rehab and then a year later start a startup, because that's the
Yeah.
most stressful thing you can imagine doing, right?
That's asking a lot of yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, but now I know that I'll be sober for the rest of my life, because if I can get through this, I can, you know, but 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 like it gave me something, so it's like I can sit here and be sad today about what happened. I am sad, but there's a part of me that's just so grateful for what I mean, because Web3 gave that to me. Do you know what I mean?
Oh
Like
yeah.
if there had been no Web3, there would have been no game, there would have been no NFTs, there would have been no recur, there would have been no opportunity for me to work with my Club Penguin team again. There would have been none of that, right? And maybe there would have been something else, but it's like as much as we can be negative about the space, and certainly I've got my criticisms, like Web3 did create a great opportunity for me to kind of reinvent myself and to express myself creatively and to get to work with people that I wasn't sure I'd ever get to work with again. And
Yeah.
to get to spend time with them over the last, year, 18 months, whatever it's been, it feels like a lifetime, but it's only been like 18 months. But to be able to, spend that time with them, like, and doing this every day, like it's been an absolute honor and privilege. And, like I said, when we had our farewell call today, you know, um, I mean, everyone was sad, but kind of, it's the reality of the space right now. I mean, look, the stock market's tanking, crypto's tanked. We're not the only company going under.
Yeah.
Like, it's not really shocking why what happened. It's just unfortunate. And so it's like I could sit here and beat myself up about, and I have for months about, oh, we should have done this, we should have done that. If I'd only worked, 18 hours instead of 16 hours that day or whatever, like, would it have been differently? Would it probably not, so like there's nothing to beat yourself up about or whatever. Like, it's just reality. And I'm just so grateful for having been able to do it. And I really
Yeah.
just, what I really like to do is find a way to keep it alive somehow, so that this thing that's given so much to me can be there for people to enjoy.
No, that's beautiful, and thank you so much for sharing your story. I
Yeah.
actually I didn't Web3 saved me in a lot of ways as well. Like something that a lot of people don't know about me is before I started in the space, I'd actually gotten so sick that I lost most of my memory because of my fever.
Wow.
Um and I went through this very weird like re self discovery period where like I'm 30 now, so I was like what 26 at the time, and I was like at a pinnacle point in my career. Like I was doing really fucking well. And then it's just like rugs, and you're just like starting over, and you're just like
Horrible. Yeah.
rediscovering all these different fucking things about yourself that you don't even know. And then like in many ways, like my first reemergence into anything creative, because I used to work in fashion and finance prior to Web3. Um, it was like dual careers. It was a weird thing. I'll explain it more on a different time. I don't want to make this about me, but essentially, like it was just like re-emerging as a human being in Web3, and
Yeah.
it's like a lot of my new early memories are in this space. And granted, most of the old stuff came back, but I don't know where I'd be if I hadn't put myself in a space like this, on like a creative level or something like that. So
Wow. That's even new early memories is a
yeah,
such
it's
a
fucking
such a
trippy. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
No,
And when you
I mean,
Oh, no, no, go ahead, go ahead.
no, I mean, it's when you that that's the thing about this space that I love, but I worry we've lost to some degree. Is like I didn't get into Web3 because I was a crypto bro who wanted to get rich. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd love to be much richer and be able to do whatever I want. But
Yeah,
if I
don't we all?
were, but if I were, I wouldn't stare at a screen all day. I would make creative stuff because I'm a creative person. So, it's like you know, I got into it because of the art and the culture. And when I had worked in Web1, so early on, I got into the internet and well, when I went to college, I was using before the web browser. There was this thing called Gopher, so you could get which was like kind of like text forums,
Yep.
and or a bulletin board service. And I remember using Gopher and like this is really cool. And they were like, yeah, there's this thing called the it's called the internet now, but it used to be called the ARPANET, and it's going to be big. And then I got a job at Apple, and they had they had like a T1, they had real internet,
Yep.
and the web browser had just come out, and I remember those early days of like people, all this, because you were just in this culture of like, there's so many creative things happening, and there was no big tech, there was no one censoring anyone, no intermediaries, no, and there was, and back then, a lot of younger people don't remember that before the internet was like awful, it was awesome. And
Yep.
kind of the meme around it was like, the internet is awesome, everything's awesome, and it was just always like positive vibes and awesome before social media. And I just remember that Web 1 period just being so creative, and it was like this fusion of technology and art and culture. And I'm a Gen Xer, and it was kind of like I don't know, we were inventing something new, something
It was
that
like a Renaissance era. Yeah.
very much. And so I wound up moving to San Francisco, working in a company called Frog Design that's pretty well known, and one of the bigger kind of design companies. And we were right there in South of Market, in San Francisco, which is where kind of startup heaven over there. And or it was at the time, and like it was a bunch of kids in their 20s, and we had taken over all these like formerly abandoned kind of shitty warehouse type locations, and turn them into cool
Oh,
kind of
that's awesome.
industrial workspaces and everything. And you know that whole aesthetic that became like what a startup's supposed to look like really came out of like, we just needed cheap real estate, right? And but I worked on a lot of .coms and a lot of like early internet stuff. And anyway, it started, that's when kind of the VC driven kind of douchebaggery of kind of the modern internet era sort of started. But I remembered that early era before that, right? And when I got into Web 3, I was like, oh my God, like this is like Web 1, like this is everything I missed and loved about Web 1. The internet is awesome again. This is great. Like
Yep.
I love the WAGMI culture and the art and doodles and what they were doing. And just like every time you would open up OpenSea, there was some new beautiful thing to look at. And I was just like, this is a platform for artists to finally make money. Because what killed the internet, I think, and is still killing it, is just that the only way you could, that everything went to free, right? And
Yep.
to get adoption, but then creators really couldn't make money, right, on the internet very well, because it was just like an ad driven business, and you couldn't sell anything, and it kind of destroyed ownership. And you know and it's like, we used to have CD collections and movie collections, and you would go over to your friend's house and look at their CD rack, and it would tell you something about who they were. And
Yep.
all that just kind of disappeared, and it turned into streaming and all this. And so this whole idea of like ownership, and what ownership means, and not just what it means to own something, but what it means to the person that you bought it from. Like I love Jack Butcher. I'd love to be able to afford some of his stuff, but I love, I like, he's one of the most thoughtful
He does
guys
some really
about.
cool stuff. Yeah.
Well, he thinks about, he's kind of at the, thinking about like business, technology, art, kind of all together, right? And how they, and his art is really a commentary on the internet in a way. And I was, and it's stuff like that really kind of got me like this is something magic is happening here. And then I feel like over the last year and a bit, like a lot of that has been kind of blown away by the meme coin thing, and it's just turned into you
Yeah.
know Wind Moon, and like daily runners and lots of
Crabs in a
charts. And
barrel mentality. It's like, at the end of the day, like I'm similar to you. When I first joined Web 3, I was kind of in this spot where I didn't have much to lose, so I was like, "Fuck it, like let me lose myself in this world." And the world was amazing. Like everything felt so novel. People were like always trying to experiment with some new shit. Um, in like the tech, even the Ponzi's were creative. Like it wasn't that it was like it wasn't that there weren't scammers. It was just like the scams were actually kind of fun in the sense that it's like, all right, I lost some money, but that was kind of a fun ride. Like, not to glorify scamming in any way, but I'm just saying, like, it was kind of entertaining at least, right? And now it's just like this race to fucking zero, like all the time, and it's like everyone is trying to extract from this industry to like convert it back to fiat, to go be rich, all that, and it's just like, guys, kind of losing the plot just a little bit, like a whole lot, really. But this time, like I would say, since late 2022, it kind of hasn't been the same. Like something
Yeah.
clicked at that end of that last quarter of 22 that just I feel like people are just in full blown like survival mode. It's really fucking weird.
Yeah, I think, people thought they made a lot of money on, but it wasn't real, right? It's like, just because number goes up, it's not real unless you realize it. And I think people felt like they made a lot of money and lost a lot of money. And so, it created this kind of gambler behavior where it's like I have to chase to get back to where I was. And, feeling there's this concept in game design that we talk about, this psychological concept called loss aversion. And the thing about loss aversion is that people will, if you give someone something, they will be much more disturbed by the notion of losing it than if you had never given it to them in the first place and they just don't have it.
Interesting.
So I think that there's an element of people like they thought they were generationally rich or something, and then they didn't cash out and they lost, and then they're like, I got to chase, I got to get back. And then it created this behavior where it's like, well, I got to get out before everyone else so that doesn't happen to me again. And it just kind of borked the whole thing. And what got lost in that is the culture, and as a founder, it's been really hard, right? Because you get told by people, you know, so you want to know about roadblocks and, things that you run into. I mean, one is like, oh, you got to do you know, the attention economy thing, and you got to, constantly be out there banging the drum. And yeah, and I'm not saying you don't, right? But I think that the attention seeking, it's like there's something obnoxious about being in a space where everyone is seeking your attention all the time. Do you know what I mean? At a
It's
volume of like,
exhausting. It's fucking
yeah,
exhausting.
yeah.
Like it,
It's
it
it's
just
it's pick me kind of energy. You know what I mean? It's like it's
yeah.
really cringy. And and I'm not, I'm a promoter. I'm a showman. I've worked at, I've been I'm a marketer. I've been, I do that, but there's something about the shamelessness, that I'm a very authentic guy and a pretty honest guy. And so, it just got it really started to grind me down, like the whole like, just constant attention seeking kind of thing, and people just stopped, and I started getting advice from people like, investors and stuff, where it's like, well, why are you even making a game? It's about the token. The token is the product. You need to put all your focus on the token. And I and I understand that, sort of, except for
The worst
look at all
fucking
the people,
advice ever.
huh?
That's the worst fucking advice
It's
ever for
terrible
someone
advice.
like you. Yeah.
It's it's not what I want to hear. And this was my
Yeah.
thing, is when people would tell me that, I'm like, look, you want game makers, people who make games, and who are creative people, like they're not wired that way, right? You're a trader, so you sit in front of screens and you flip on opportunities all day, and that's what you do. We're long-term people, right? We don't operate in fucking nanosecond increments. We build on visions, and we iterate, and we fail, and we pivot, and we, like that's what we do. And it just, there's a real chemistry mismatch, I think, a little bit there. And yeah, no game maker wants to hear like your game doesn't matter, from the people who are investing in it. And it just became very much about, and by the way, I had a lot of good investors too. I had a lot of great investors that I felt, that were super supportive and never, and were only ever helpful, right? So I don't want to say,
Fair
I don't
enough.
want to be negative about VCs, because I had some great ones, who were incredibly helpful. And to this day, like when I had to announce that we were going out of business and we lost money, I got thank you letters from them. Thank you for letting us invest in your fund, and please let us know what you do next. And we like, so it's not just investors, but it's the climate that the investors find themselves in right now, which is that most of them deployed their funds in like 22, 23, right? And they don't,
Yep.
and they were expecting to raise new funds. And because they didn't have good returns from like that bear period, right, in 22 or whatever, they've spent the majority of this cycle trying to show returns, so that they can raise the next fund, right? And
Yep.
and so a lot of them had to switch from investing in ventures, which is longer term and higher risk, frankly, to liquid trading. Well, when they're doing liquid trading, they're not investing in startup companies anymore. They're not in the same way, right? They're buying tokens off
Yeah,
the
it's
market.
narrative based. Yeah, it's narrative based. It's very like what's going on in the next 2 weeks. It's fucking horrible
Yeah,
stuff.
and so this is why, and I said it in the Decrypt interview, this is why you see, game founders running around doing, AI agents. And, we flirted with some of that too, but it's like, you get told, okay, well, game isn't good enough. You need to do an L2. Everyone's doing L2s. You need to do an L2. That's why we have too many fucking L2s. We have too many L2s because everyone told their portcos that your game, that whatever app you're making isn't enough. So if you want to be $1 billion unicorn, you have to make you have to make an L2. So they all made L2s. Now we have too many fucking L2s. And what it's done is it's fragmented Ethereum. So now Ethereum's a fucking mess because you have all these L2s. And the reason that Solana has benefited is because there's one Solana. So
Yep.
all the liquidity was concentrated there. It's Solana's got its own problems. But my point is that, so there was chasing the L2 narrative. Then after that, it was Telegram, got to do Telegram. And I remember when I was doing Telegram, I was like, or when people were telling me about Telegram, I was like, okay, well, I think there's something really cool about the platform and I'm interested in it and would love to figure out a way to go there, blah, blah, blah. But if I drop everything right now and do Telegram, because I was told like the game you're making or the type of game you're making, it's not about that anymore. It's all about Telegram. I'm like, oh yeah, well, if I drop everything and I focus on Telegram, by the time I get that game out, are you going to tell me it's something else? And they're like, no, 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 this is the future. And then sure enough, a few months later, it's AI agents. Games are dead. No one's getting funded unless you're an AI gaming. Do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, dude, I fucking know. Trust me, I know. I've tried helping a lot of projects in this space get funding, be successful with some, not as successful with others. I play an interesting role in the space because I create content and I co-founded a couple of gaming communities with some of my friends. But I'm a nerd at heart. Like I'm a gamer at heart, so I can't help but like play the game and then start poking around and talking to the devs and building those kind of relationships. And the things that I've heard that devs have to go through in this space is terrifying. Like when it comes to the funding side of it, you know.
Well, I mean, it's like I said, there's some really good guys, and they do believe in crypto and they want to see success, and so there are a lot of good people, but and I mentioned some of their names, but I do think that you know the whole thing about chasing narratives around, you know, it's a road to nowhere, right? And then the last was like meme coins, and why don't you launch a token like a meme coin and launch it on pump.fun and all that. And it's just like it's all gimmicks, so like what I feel like I was trying to do, I built this game for was, the idea of a casual multiplayer game that could onboard lots of people from Web 2 with, kind of familiar gameplay, but with a Web 3 twist, right? That was sort of my thinking. And and we sort of validated that. We had a good sized community actually. I've talked to a lot of other founders on what their DAU is. This the other thing is like anything you see on DApp radar is bullshit.
Oh
Because
yeah.
there's bots. All those numbers are botted. So like, when people proclaim all these huge, numbers with UAW, like, no, they don't. It's not true. So it becomes very hard because you're talking to VCs who don't really know gaming metrics. And so we had a decent sized community for Web3. Actually, I was talking to one of the bigger games in the space today. I had bigger DAU than they did. We had good retention for mobile and relative to our comp set. We had, very low CPIs, cost per install. So there were things there. I think there were things you could knock on the game. Was it differentiated enough from Among Us? Was it, did we have enough maps? Was it easy enough to make a match? What about empty rooms? Like there were a lot of things there. I think they were all overcomeable. But by the time we needed to raise, no one was deploying into Web3 games unless you had like outstanding metrics and we're in some narrative, and the problem is you can't just pivot a game every 5 minutes to the new narrative, and so
No, you have to
I had
rework so
really
many systems when you do that.
yeah.
Like it's a nightmare. Like I think what a lot of people don't understand is unless you've been in enough startups or enough like smaller companies, every time you pivot, it's a new systematic design that has to take place, and you're destroying the old systems, implementing new systems. That costs a lot of money. Like there's a lot of like financial costs, whether you can actually see them or not. That goes into those processes. Like it's just not the smartest way to build a business.
Yeah, I think it's, I think it's you've also got a lot of first time VCs, right? Because they made a lot of money in crypto and thought they'd try hand as a VC. And look, we're all trying our best, right? I don't want to slide people, but it's the space, right? And it's everyone just trying to find a way, and everything just rotating constantly. And it it's hard, and these funds are under tremendous pressure to deliver returns to their LPs or go under, and I get that. And they're just trying to find a lane to skate in that will lead to success. But I think the thrashing over the last year and just the chasing of wackiness, and like I said in the Decrypt interview, like some of these are not bad ideas. Like AI agents, I think there's a real case for AI agents with our games and with our game, and like the ability to because our game is very social. And like, so an AI agent that can play with you like a real player that knows the lore and can make up story, that can interact with you on Twitter and Telegram and then in game, that's pretty cool, right? And
Yep.
on Discord, that would be really cool, right? And if I could focus on that problem for more than 5 minutes, I know I could build something really compelling. But by the time I do that, it's going to be something. Then people are going to be like, "Well, that doesn't matter anymore. Go focus." So it's hard, with the ADD in the space, and I think that what that's led to is it created a failure factory, and that's where we are. Is fucking the whole thing is collapsed, and it's crypto's not dead by any standard. It's going to come back, obviously, with regulation. It's going to come back, but what, but I think a lot of games and a lot of people and all the founders I know in the space, dude, when I talk to the game founders, they're burned out, they're pissed off, they're mentally over it, and getting yelled at on Twitter all the time about their token or when's their token coming. They're tired of being, they don't necessarily believe in tokens anymore because they've seen it kind of blow up a lot of these businesses. They want to find another way to do Web3 that doesn't involve having the floated token on, that pumps and dumps, right?
Yep.
These are people who've built real products in the past, and they have reputations they want to protect, and they want to, they just want to build an honest business, and and they're exhausted. And I think a lot of people are going to leave over the next, probably 6 months or so. And that's really unfortunate because games was kind of the last thing, the last bastion of creative people here, and
Yep.
um and so, I still believe in it very much, but I just think also that I just think this token thing, and look, I think tokens could be potentially very powerful, but I also think it's like giving a thermonuclear weapon to a 5-year-old, you know? It's like are we really mature enough to launch 1,000 new currencies? I was having this conversation with someone today that's like, look, I could build a crypto game. I could build a game, a Web3 game that entirely with USDC, with no token risk, no, you're not going to wake up tomorrow if you put $100 in the game and find out you have $50. You know,
Yep.
I could I could build a game completely with USDC and NFTs that would be fucking dope. And if you want to take your USDC proceeds and you want to go gamble that in a meme coin casino, you go for it, right? But there's more than one way to do this. Like if you look at what Gabe Layden is doing with app tokens, most people don't understand what he's doing. But he's really rebuilding how Web3 works. And it's because Gabe's one of the smartest game designers I know. And he went and he, and he started working on a game and he was like, none of this technology works for games really. Like, I got to reinvent this. And so that's why he did ERC 721C to enforce royalties, because if you could get around royalties, then there's no rev stream back to developers, and so no incentive
Yep.
for them to support secondary sales. And then now he's done Token Master and the creator contracts that he's doing tokens, and some of the things he's doing with restricted composability. I think he's doing some of the most important work right now in trying to figure out how to make this decentralized model really work in a way that doesn't just because Blur completely exposed the problem, which is that you can, be an altruistic actor and put out your cool art and whatever, and and Pac-Man will come out of nowhere and come up with create a vampire attack around your well-meaning thing that gives people an incentive to drive it to zero
Yep.
so that they can mine the value out of it. And
Blur,
that's
Blur,
exactly,
Sushi Swap. We've seen it so many times.
yeah. And they're just they're extractive, but somehow these guys build huge cults, and people, give them godlike status. And it's not because they're creating value, it's because they're destroying it. And but they make a lot of money in the process, and some other people make money with them. But anyway, I mean, I
No,
think it's
actually,
become very hard.
before we move on from the topic, because
Yeah,
I have
yeah.
a good understanding of what Gabe's building, but I think a lot of people don't, and I think it would actually be way more impactful coming from like another developer. Like I can say it, but everyone's like, "Oh, this guy is just another Web3 creator." Coming from you, it kind of hits different because you're a developer. Like, what do you really see in what Gabe is building, like the app token and all the important work that he's been doing for the last year?
Yeah, I mean, basically what he's building is what he realized with NFTs was um that there was no enforcement of royalties, right? And so he created this technology that was all decentralized and on chain, but that enforced royalties. And basically, what it did is you couldn't move the NFT from one owner to another without the royalty transaction happening. And so he had this sort of smart contract middleman that controlled the movement of the NFT and enforced the rules, right? And that had never existed before because you just had the smart contract, the NFT itself, right? And
Yep.
then he was like, okay, tokens have the same problem, because he started realizing. I remember a tweet he put out about a year ago. He was like, 96% of the transaction volume on these tokens is going to happen outside of the game. And if that's the case, then there's no point in launching a token if you can't make money off those trades. So you need some way to enforce fees. And the problem is that there is no way to do that right now. And you can get completely circumvented by the exchanges. So, and he's like, the exchanges are all, have their own incentives as sexes, especially to fuck you, and he and I had been talking for a while about, what had been going on, like all the pressure that other founders are getting around listing on it on sexes, because all of us were getting phone calls like, you got to get on Bybit, or you got to get on, Binance or whatever. And, they started asking for, multi-hundred thousand millions of, $1 million transaction fee or listing fees. And so it started to, it started to just become really prohibitive. And what and very extracting. And so anyway, he started figuring out that there was a real problem there. So he built this thing, this thing called Token Master, that basically your token is tied to his central controller, and you can put rules around how that token can be transferred. And you can also do other things like dynamic pricing and all kinds of cool shit around it. But and that's one of the rule conditions you can set on it is like, what's the, you can set different prices, you can set price tiers, you can set floors. So you can say like, let's say you want rarity classes, so you want like common, rare, legendary, whatever, and you could say like a legendary will never trade below $100, a rare will never trade below $50 or whatever. There's all kinds of cool shit you could do with this technology that can make it
That's
actually
sick.
work.
So it helps you like maintain the value and stuff of certain
Yeah.
tiers within your game and your ecosystem.
Yeah. So maxis will say, well, I own it, so I can do whatever I want with it, right? But the flip to that as well, yeah, but it's in the context of the game and there's certain rules around how you can use it. And so look, we can, you can debate I can see the argument from both sides, but what I like about what Gabe is doing is he's building a system under which you can have a blockchain economy that has some rule sets around it and that can be, that can be managed. So anyway, I think it gives game makers the tools that we need to actually build game economies that are functional, because the problem right now is that when you have unrestricted composability, you really have you can't incorporate those tokens into your game economy without the risk of somebody vampire attacking them and doing something to destroy the game economy. Do you know what I mean?
And in many ways, this can kind of be a game outside of the game. Like, I know the great game designers are going to find a way to take rules like that and make it another game loop within, the ecosystem that exists probably outside of, the engine itself. Because
But what I
it
like
sounds like
about it
you do
is
a lot of crazy shit with that.
You can do a lot of crazy shit with it. But what I like about it is that you can still allow it to, you could do it permissionless if you want to, right? So that's your choice. But you could also do it permission, and you could decide who you want to work with. So, it's like you can still enable distributed economies across the internet, but you can also, whitelist only good actors, right? And not whitelist bad actors. And that's the thing he realized with what he was doing with NFTs was that you needed that it wasn't good enough to just blacklist bad actors, because there would always be a new bad actor. It was, you needed to be able to whitelist good actors, so anyway, it's very interesting what he's doing, but he's trying to build a system where you could actually kind of have a little bit more stability in the way that you manage your economy, and you can externalize your game economy with some confidence that it's not going to get destroyed by games that are composing with it, you know what I mean, or apps.
Yeah, no, I think that once this tech is like, I don't know where he is in the building process, but once it's distributed more, it'll solve a lot of problems for a lot of developers, because developers, game developers particularly, don't want to have to worry about fucking maintaining a full-blown economy where because a lot of them are being released early on in development, or certain things are going on. That's kind of the whole point of like building in public or whatever. It's, you don't want to have to worry about, oh, I'm going to spend 20% of my time actually building on the game, because I have to worry 80% of the time about maintaining floor price. Like, no one really wants to
Yeah,
do
and I
that.
think this is. I mean, truthfully, it's one. I mean, so some of the ways Gabe is thinking about using the app token stuff is like a semi-stable coin, right? An in-game kind of stable coin type thing. And you may not, you may decide not to float your token, and that might be okay. I think there's a lot. I think that I think that as we run into these problems, we find solutions for them, and and the industry will mature. But it's been kind of a funky, funky kind of, like you said, since 22, really
Yeah.
23, 24. We're kind of, I don't know, our gawky teenage years. Maybe hopefully we're growing into our cool college years or something soon.
Hopefully, man, because it's so awkward right now. And I want to take it back. I don't know if there was anything that you wanted to cover, but I do want to take it back to Mystery Society.
Yeah.
Um, are we good on time? Do you have to go or anything, by
Yeah,
the
I'm
way?
good. I'm good on time.
All right. So where we left off with Mystery Society, it was you had just gotten your old artist back from Recur, right?
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
had
yeah.
gotten the 3 million bucks. And so, what does the timeline from then to now look like? Right, you're arguably in September 2023. You got your full time artist back. You're back to cooking on Mystery Society. Like, what's the process over the next? I would say what, like 14? No, like 18 months.
Yeah, so I hired a team back, got a team around it, and I wanted to get into beta before Christmas, but we didn't, or into alpha before Christmas. We got into alpha of January of 23. And then we had a lot of work to do on the game, like in terms, we just realized we had a lot of work to put in a content management system, to build the event system, to build out the tournament system. So like there was just a lot of infrastructure that we needed to build around the game. Plus we were, plus the wallet solution. At that time, there weren't really, we didn't really have all the like, um, smart wallets and all that stuff weren't fully baked yet. And so we had to build our own custodial wallet solution that we wound up ripping out, and blah, blah, blah. And we were on Polygon, and I'd say by summer, it started to become clear that, you know, just that the Polygon ecosystem was not, very vibrant for games, shall I say, and that was becoming an inhibitor. And so we looked at a couple of chain options. Ronin was interested in us for a while. Then they decided not to, take our game. And but we were also talking Immutable, so we decided to go over to Immutable, and we were able to get on the platform pretty quickly within a couple weeks, and we were able to do another alpha test in the summer, probably around June. And then in July we did an event with the Badagos guys. I'm wearing their shirt today.
Oh, sick.
We did a Choose Rich event with Choose Rich Nick, and that was fun. And then really it was when we got to September of this year, so like really a year after we kind of put the team together, that we were able to start doing beta. And so we did, a tournament in September, we did a tournament in October, and then we did another tournament in December. And those three tournaments back to back to back, sort of proved that we were able to do live, starting to be able to do live operations, and getting to a place where we could do sort of monthly events. So it we and the only reason we didn't do another tournament in January was just or February, was just that we knew that um you know we knew that we were running out of money. And so I didn't want to invest all. I was doing sort of lower hanging fruit things that we could do while we were raising money,
Yep.
because I didn't want to keep running tournaments if we weren't going to be able to launch a token, frankly. So I kind of was just doing a lot of like bug fixing and stuff like that to kind of be ready to do another push if we had closed. And if we had closed, we would have, what we would have done is, we would have started working on it. We would have implemented the battle pass. We were starting to have traction on monetization in games. So we would have focused a lot on monetization in mobile. We would have taken the game to Apple, because we weren't on iOS yet. We would have we would have started working on UGC was the other thing. So we wanted to do like the ability for you to do your own UGC maps and run your own servers and monetize your own community. And so we had some cool ideas there. Like I had been talking to Ape Chain about maybe taking the game over there, um, or not exclusively, but kind of as a platform, an
Yeah.
additional platform. And if we had done that, we wanted to do like the Ape Clubhouse as like a map,
Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah.
would have been so dope. But we wanted the ability for like people to be able to build their own maps, and then maybe they could run their own tournaments. Like imagine if you could have, the Ape map with and you could play it as an ape avatar, but in our style, right? So it's interactive with all our other outfits, and you could and maybe there would be ape only leaderboards for that map, and and 8 coin prize pools, and like that could have been awesome. So those are kind of the kinds of things I wanted to do, if we kept
Yeah.
going. And ultimately, like I wanted it to be so that you could run your own map. Like imagine if somebody like Bryson or Jonah or somebody like that had their own map and kind of hang out for their community that they could play and monetize in when those influencers aren't around. And sometimes those influencers could do events and hang out with their community or whatever, and it would give them a place to like but maybe they could have their own little kind of like hang in our game, right? And so I like that's kind of the direction I want to go, was like more the ability for the community to build their own maps and to be able to to kind of run their own business models within it and have it be more of a UGC driven type platform, and then add additional mini games and things to it, not just the social deduction game, but like other styles of social games that you could play with people. That was kind of, and that's how we would kind of expand into more of a vision of a like party game world, as opposed to just
Yeah.
the social deduction thing.
Damn, it sounds like we're so close too. That's crazy. Like
We were
essentially
close.
just
Yeah.
needed like the last leg of funding to really just like get it over the hump, so to speak, right? Like
Yeah, I think if we had had
um
another year, we would have really been able to build something that could have been really cool. I do think we were on the cusp, and the thing that tells me that you never know if you really have a community in this space, because people show up, they're in the Discord, you do a tournament, they show up to play, but because it's incentivized and they're there to earn token, you don't like, are they there
it
because they
always
want?
feels borrowed. Yeah. It always feels
Are they
like borrowed
there?
community. It never feels like your community a lot of the times, I would say.
Well, it did when we announced that we were going away, because
Yeah.
it started to feel like we had a real community, I would say, over the last couple months. But after the holiday, like the holiday tournament was really, if I could have just kept going after the holiday tournament, because that tournament we had excellent metrics, and if I could have just kept going, I know we could have built on top of that. But people, like somebody said to me, like another founder was like, normally when we see that things are not working out, um or normally when people announce they have to close these things, like the timeline is angry. With you guys, it's very sad. And he's like,
Yep.
that tells me that you had something special. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. I mean, people wanted to hang out, like, I mean, we had a game night last night, our last game night, and the guy who, was the number one guy in most of our tournaments, this guy played, I mean, I don't even know how many hours, like, I mean, hundreds of hours, right, to get to that position over months. And he shows up to play one more time, with everyone. If anyone had any right to be angry that like they invested a lot of time and there was no token, it would have been him, right?
Yep.
And the fact that he shows up just to play, it just shows that there were people there that really loved it and loved the community. And you know I would have loved to have dedicated more time to that. You know, um,
Yeah. Rather than like dealing with like VCs and all that type of stuff, you mean?
well, I spent a lot of time fundraising. kind of all consuming for the last 3 months. Um,
Damn.
yeah, and just nobody was deploying, So um, you just spend a lot of your time kind of chasing money to get the opportunity to do what you want to do, um, but and I also think figuring out how to really kind of nurture that more positive community piece and not just be about incentivized stuff and all that. We were really starting to get there, So I don't know, man. I like I said, I feel good about what we did. I just wish we had a little more time to do it.
I actually have a couple questions just for I consider myself like a researcher of the space in many ways, where I'm always like just trying to learn as much as I can, to share with my friends, with other developers, things like that. So one thing that you mentioned is that you guys had a pretty high DAU compared to a bigger game in this space. We don't know the
I
name
don't
of
want to
it, not asking
overstate.
you
I don't
to
want to
name it,
be overstated.
but
It was obviously it
yeah,
wasn't that high. It would
yeah.
have been, yeah.
But it was a big. But like, what was that number looking like? Do you know?
I mean, we
Like,
were
are
doing,
you at liberty to say?
we're doing up to 4,000 DAU in a tournament. I mean, it was
Nice.
very decent for Web3.
Yeah, that's great for Web3. Shit, there are a lot of games that would die for those type of metrics.
Yeah, I mean,
um,
yesterday we probably had 1,500, 2,000 DAU on our last day.
it's solid. Yeah, and your experiences like working with Web3, right? So like creators, agencies, were they that beneficial? Were they not? And again, I'm not trying to take slight to anyone. I just want to know
Yeah.
like what is the perceived value from like a developer when it comes to the Web3 community or creators inside of the space, you know?
Um, I think the most impactful stuff we did were with guilds. Um, and the reason is that the guilds are pre-qualified game players.
Yep.
Where when you work with influencers, depending on what influence you work on, some are um, a lot of influencers are more crypto than they are game, So
Yeah.
you get guys who will show up and maybe participate because they want to get something, but their mentality is very much extract. So in terms of like the higher quality players, I mean, like Moku, we did an integration with Moku. The like great quality community in Moku, like they're super gamers,
Shout out Hantao and Moku.
What's that?
Shout out Hantao and Moku.
Shout out to Hantao, who's a good friend, K-Gen, great of guilds there. YGG, obviously, YGG was awesome. We did kind of guild versus guild play with our team system in December. That did really well for us. And YGG helped us do all that. And we were in YGG season 7, 8, and 9. So, Gabby, fucking awesome and, great supporter. But I would say that stuff. I mean, the problem with KOLs and Web3, and some are better than others, right?
Yep.
But these guys want, they want, I mean, a cheap one is like $1,500 a video, more. I mean, some of the bigger ones, it's like $7,000 a video, $10,000 a video. I mean, I bought 13,000 users in December on mobile at 21 cents a piece, spending, like $2,800. So it doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean?
Yo, that's fucking hell. I mean, I know I'm not trying to be insensitive, but it's also really fucking funny. You're like 7,000 video. I spent $2,800 and got fucking 2,100 users at 21 cents a piece.
Yeah. So, if you want to use a Web3 agency, probably you're spending, at the peak, you were spending, 30, you could have been spending 30, 20, 30 grand a month for the agency. Plus they want, a budget of, call it, 10 to 20 grand a month for KOLs. You could be spending,
50, 60 G's.
50 grand a month on marketing
That's crazy.
in Web3. And that is a monster budget in Web2. Monster. So it like the value add, I mean, obviously these guys can charge it because they that's what they get.
Yeah, there's multiple things. On the flip side, it's like if there's NFT sales or token sales, there's an incentivized side of it. They're taking a little bit of a risk. Like um, I have to say those things because I have a manager that will kill me if I don't say it. But I am also one of the creators that is very like down to earth with certain things. Like, for example, in your case, you guys didn't even have a live token, so you're not benefiting from that speculative stuff or anything like that. Um, and I try myself, like I always only try to talk about assets that are actually playable and like what can I do with it? What can like I'm not talking about assets for like, oh, floor price go up. Like have
Mhm.
I've had that effect on certain games, yes, but not by intention. It was more like, oh shit, I pulled this card in Wag Me and then I like tweet about it and then people like start buying Wag Me cards or something, stuff like that. Um
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, we have an influencer like
Yeah.
Pachara, who's a smaller,
Oh, shout out Pachara.
but she's awesome and she loves our
Yeah.
game. She just plays it for fun and like, she's been one of the most awesome people since we announced we're winding down. And like she's absolutely the type of influencer you like to work with because she's very passionate about the game, right? But there's a lot of other influencers that you wind up working with who you can tell they're less interested and they're just doing it for cash, and it comes across in the content, I think.
Yeah.
And the problem too is you just like, so they do one video and like there's no repetition with their audience, so it's just kind of one and
It
done.
doesn't go anywhere, yeah.
Very
Yeah.
hard to get Web3 influencers to do like a campaign with you, like
Yeah.
for any kind of reasonable budget. Like what I would love to do is like get somebody who would do multiple videos and multiple like multiple hits over a month and like focus that way. And but it's hard because they've got so many other priorities and so many other things and so many people throwing money at them to promote so many things. And I sort of get it, but it is I think influencers is something you do, in my opinion, as a part of a marketing strategy. It's a complement, but it's not
Mhm.
complement to your core, but it can't be your core.
Yeah.
That's my advice.
No, that's great feedback. It's very rare that we get to hear it candidly, like I think a lot of people could benefit from hearing that, both developers and creators, because I know there's like a lot of upcoming creators now that want to learn how to conduct themselves in a proper way that's like a little friendlier towards the games and things like that. So I appreciate you sharing that with us because that's like, in my opinion, very, very important advice.
Yeah.
Um, and again, shout out to Pachara. She and I go way back, and I have a ton of respect for her and how she handles her
Yeah,
community.
she's amazing. Yeah.
Um, so it's been really interesting. And guilds, creators that are willing to do like the long haul kind of stuff, felt to be like the most valuable for you guys. Um, and I'm glad to hear that you guys had a couple thousand DAU because that is actually, I'm used to hearing like a couple hundred, So people
Oh
can't
yeah.
really say that you couldn't get funding because there weren't active users compared to most Web3 games, right? Like obviously it's still a smaller number compared to like a Web2 game, but for a Web3 game, that's pretty up there from my knowledge. Um, it's in the higher upper echelon for sure.
Yeah, I don't think that the problem was that honestly, I don't think it was our metrics. I think it was just the funding climate, you
That's
know.
actually fucking insane. So it's like on paper, there isn't anything you did wrong. I guess is like what
I
feels
mean,
frustrating.
sure, we did
Like
lots of things wrong. I mean,
no, no, no.
it's a startup,
But I mean
man.
when it comes
I
to
got
I
all
mean
day. I mean,
what you're
yeah,
supposed to.
there's lots of things
So
we could have
what you're
done
supposed to do. So what do you think you could have done better?
better. Um, I think that it took us too long to get into beta. There was a lot of technology we had to fight with. Um, I think if I were to do it over again, I would avoid chain exclusivity. Um, it's too hard to predict where chains are going to be in terms of their support. And I think that really you need to be multi-chain, and in order to capitalize on the whole opportunity. And the technology is not really there to support that super well right now, because you need some kind of abstraction layer that allows you to trade across chains, right? And spend money across chains. And so that technology is kind of all rolling out now, but it's not there. So I think in order to have your maximum opportunity, you need to be able to support multiple chains and multiple communities. And but chain exclusivity is like really dicey because you may find out that it's a good chain, but that the community is not aligned with your game. Like maybe they like to play, first person shooters and you're not a first person shooter or whatever, right? So
Yep.
you I think that the chain exclusivity is tough and a lot of people have kind of moved away from that. I think that those are some of the I think getting exclusive chains. Um, you know I think once we started doing these monthly tournaments, we started getting a good momentum. But the other thing is like I would have put way less marketing money into Web3 and put more into Web2.
Yep.
Um, and I and again, this is like if I could get in a time machine and go back and tell myself advice, I would also say like, you know, like don't even think about a sex or launching on sexes or courting sexes or that's a that's just bad, because it's extractive, it's the wrong people. This is the problem is people paying $1 million fees. I mean, Infinigods spent $1 million to get listed on Hyperliquid,
Yep.
and the launch, did okay, but then everyone dumped it, and they, like clearly they didn't make their money back on Hyperliquid,
Yep.
and that's a perfect example where people, yeah, you paid, you got listed on the platform, but the people on that platform are not going to hold because it's just a trade. So this is the thing is like the people who are going to hold your token are the people who play your game and actually show up. And I think that you know, I would have put more focus into. I would have taken the money I had and just put it into Web2 user acquisition, because for our game, I don't think that it was Web3 degenerative enough for the Web3 crowd to really embrace it at the level that they do other kind of casino-ish games. And
Yeah.
but where our game really could have would have had the potential was breaking through with Web2 audiences and bringing Web2 audiences into a Web3 economy in a very like seamless kind of way, right? And so if I could, get in a time machine and go back in time, I probably would have put a lot of energy into that, and we might have had, a much bigger player base that was also a Web2 player base, and then people would have been like, "Oh my God, like how'd you do that?" So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I just think this whole thing of over marketing, overspending to over market to a small audience of very fickle, hard to please people, versus the fact, I mean, I posted something about this on LinkedIn today. I'm like, look, there's $100 billion with a B, $100 billion free to play games industry out there that we should be trying to disrupt. And that's what we should be trying to figure out how to do is how do we get that $100 billion on chain, not trying to
Yep.
figure out how to get the less than 100,000 degens who care about games, probably more like 50,000, to play
Yep.
your game when they're playing 50 other games, or they don't even care, they're just buying the tokens. Like and I love all those people, right? I'm not shitting on them, but I'm just saying like it's not a big enough audience, it's not
No, it's
scalable.
just
And
a
I think that's
logical thing. Yeah.
I didn't realize until we were about halfway through the year that there just wasn't enough of these people. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it was that there were too many games and too many tokens and too many things chasing them versus like just going after Web2. And when we started to go after Web2, we started to see success, but it was too late. And the problem was at that point, Web2 investors weren't investing in crypto because they had been burned in their prior Web3 investments, and we're kind of like, we'll wait for regulation, right? And the
Yep.
Web3 investors just wanted token exits. So, that was and they didn't believe in game tokens at that point. So that was kind of the trap that we found ourselves in, where I think if we had gone and focused on Web 2 growth, we would have been able to raise potentially from Web 2 investors, and not just been dependent on the crypto investors.
There's some pretty sound insights. Do you think you would have like still ran it back with marketing with like guilds or creators like
Yeah.
Pachara, and then just like focused and almost like 80-20, right? Like 80% Web 2, 20% Web 3 kind of thing.
Yeah. And we were doing that, right? We were doing both. And I would have
Yeah.
keep doing both. I probably would have done, some in Web 2, Web 3 influencers, and I would have really leaned into guild versus guild competition and building more around that side of the game, and then focusing on kind of let's say the simpler version of the game, right? With the Web
Yep.
2 crowd. And I think that 1-2 punch was working for us in December.
Yeah,
We
you're
just
just
didn't have the
it
capital
was
to
just
keep
too
working on it.
late. Yeah. Man, that I mean, but it seems like I guess for the future, right? It seems like you kind of have this thing bubbling up that was suggested by one of my good friends. That I hope you kind of like find a way to cook with it
Souls.
because I think it would be really cool. Yeah, yeah, Souls.
Yeah, I
He
have to go in a
he and
second
I are
here, but
actually developing products together. Like
yeah, I
we
really liked
collaborate
him. I had a
together.
good call with him the other night, and he kind of reminded me why I
Nice.
got in this space in the first place, because he was talking about decentralized IP ownership and how your community can own stuff. And I was like, yeah, man, this is why I wanted to do this. That's when I put that tweet out about, and people really responded to it because he kind of like filled my heart up, with a little bit of like, hope. And but I I love his ideas around decentralized IP ownership and how that model can work. And what I like about it is that you can align your non your kind of non Web3 revenue, like your Web2 revenue, with your Web3 audience by letting them to participate by getting royalties. The problem is I've looked into it, and as a US person, that there's a bunch of regulation that you have to do all kinds of like, audited accounting that costs you $50,000 a quarter, and
Oh
lots of
Jesus.
paperwork and bullshit to fill out, and you could just blow it off, but you also be risking security, violating the law, and maybe it's a security, and so it kind of comes back to like, great idea, but until there's regulatory clarity, can you really do it? And at this stage in the project, do I really want to risk going to jail over like,
Yeah, sure.
so I think what we're going to do is, one of my developers is still involved. They're an equity investor. I think what we're going to do is, we're going to take it over to Steam and see if we can get some traction over there and keep the Web3 version humming. And I'm looking for a publisher, or someone to buy it. And if I can find someone to pick it up in Web3, we'll keep it live that way, and see
Yep.
if we can build some more momentum around it. Unfortunately, my team, has stepped away. One of the key people I think is going to take a job. Another one's available, so I could bring him back. So right now, what I'm trying to do is just talk to a bunch of people about what the options are, and if there's a way to keep it going, I would love to do it. I think what I've kind of concluded is like, look, this isn't going to be a company that employs a bunch of people that, where we all get like this is our day job all the time. But the game is at a point where if we could do the UGC stuff, I could go get a job and do this as a side hustle, right? And some of my team would do that as well. And maybe there's a way for us to be involved in a different way. I mean, this is what I was saying to the guys the other day. It was like, hey, if Club Penguin had kind of, if there had been a way for us to stay involved with Club Penguin and go do something else, for our primary job, but then, put a couple hours here and there and make a little extra money doing Club Penguin all day long, we would have done that, so,
Yep.
well, not all day long because we would have had day jobs, but, but, but when we could, right? And so I'm like, look, the Mystery Society for me, it just kind of goes back to what I said earlier, which is, win, lose, or draw with this game, this is a game that saved my life in a lot of ways, and gave me, a new lease on life and something to, a creative vehicle to really kind of reinvent myself and, and explore this new space that I was really passionate about, excited about. And if there was a way to keep it going, even if I couldn't do it full time, if I was able to be, my kids are in college now, like, so like I don't have little babies running around that I need to, pay attention to after school or something, like um if I, if I could keep it, stay involved and keep it alive in some way, I would love to, but it may not be the time for that. It may be that the market is just not there, or it may be that the market's there in 6 months and we bring it back. I've got people who are interested in doing that. So I think, I'm just gonna explore it and see what's out there and let the community hear the podcast, hear my story, and thank you for letting me come on and tell you kind of what the game means to me and give you my thoughts. And if people look, if the community wants this game, they can make their voice heard, and hopefully someone will hear it and help us find a way forward. And if not, if now's not the time, I'm very grateful for the opportunity and grateful for the community and everything that they've given to me. And and hopefully we'll see them again in some form down the road.
No, man. I mean, rooting for you guys to find some sort of solution, whether it's now or later down the road. Ultimately, it's been great getting to know you over the course of the podcast. I'm
You
kind
too,
of sad
man.
we
Thanks,
hadn't.
Mizzy.
Yeah, I'm kind of sad we hadn't crossed paths sooner, man. Like I feel like we would have had a lot of fun together. But
Totally.
I mean, don't be a stranger. I play Web 2 games all the time. I actually play Marvel Rivals in my community like regularly. So if you guys are gonna end up porting it to Steam, it could still be a game that we play in our
Yeah,
community.
let's do it.
And yeah, I would love to just stay in touch. And if you start building another game, or if you start whatever you do, I want to be a part of that next journey in
Wow.
whatever way possible. Because I think that would be really cool, man. I
You're
love
right.
people that
That
build
that's
for the
that's
party.
a great. I'm honored that you would say that, and thank you. And yeah, let's stay in touch, man. Really appreciate it, and thank you for giving me the time.